Throughout history, there have always been superpowers. Starting from the Achaemenids, Romans, Mongols, Portuguese, Spanish, English, and Russians, all of them were once the superpowers of their time. But over time, they declined and handed over the mantle of superpower to another country. The most recent superpower today, as you may know, is the United States. Some might argue that no, China is now surpassing the United States and that the United States is in decline. If we look at this issue logically, this isn't true, because no country in the world has the same level of influence as the United States in every aspect, especially in terms of military, financial, and cultural power. By the end of World War II, it was clear that the United States was the world's superpower, and England handed over its superpower crown to the United States. However, during this time, the Soviet Union was also a superpower. This video, though, is not about America's superpower status, but about what has kept this country as a superpower, and that is none other than its military bases. If you look at the globe, the United States has military bases in every region you can think of. And not just one or two, but hundreds of bases across the globe. These bases started to expand after World War II. You should know that the establishment of United States military bases outside the country started in the defeated nations of World War II, Germany, and Japan. And 5 years later, South Korea was added as well. Currently, the largest number of United States military bases is in these 3 countries. Many of these bases are secret. Not that you might think there's a secret location where no one knows what's going on. The bases are there, but no one has written about them or mentioned them as a known base. That's why even Pentagon staff don't exactly know where all of America's bases are located. There is no official record of these bases, and you won't find all of them in any search. For this reason, an American author named David Vine in 2020 took on the task of identifying all the United States bases worldwide. After his research, guess how many bases he found? 750 bases across 80 different countries. An unbelievable number for any country. When David Vine obtained this data, he wrote a book about it called Base Nation. Of course, United States military bases around the world are always undergoing changes. For example, in Afghanistan, the United States had more than 10 bases, which have since been dismantled. In Iraq, there were 6 or 7 bases. But now only 3 remain, and those are also likely to be removed. 3 of the countries with the most United States bases are the previously mentioned defeated nations of World War II and South Korea. How many United States bases do you think there are in Germany? 10, 20, 50? Think higher. The United States has 119 bases in Germany. How about in Japan? The same as Germany, 119 bases. In South Korea, a smaller country, there are 80 bases. In the statistics provided by David Vine, he says these 750 bases are not all of them. There are many bases around the world that no one knows are United States bases. David Vine says that more than 100 bases are like this, nameless and unknown. Many of the United States bases have been built on islands to avoid being on the territory of any country. One of the largest is Diego Garcia, located in the middle of the Indian Ocean. All the bases you see around the world vary in size, large and small, but they all have standard runways. A lot of military equipment is stored there, and there are a lot of personnel. You should also know that at all United States military bases, even if there are no fighter jets or attack helicopters, various drones are always present. An interesting point about these bases is that if you enter one as a soldier, officer, pilot, or in any other position, it's like entering the United States, whether the base is in Syria, Qatar, Guantanamo, or Germany, it's all essentially inside the United States. If the base is large, there are lots of American-style houses and apartments where the personnel live with their families. Even if the base is small, there are still some apartments available. When you walk out of the doors of these bases, it feels like you're on one of the streets of an American city. McDonald's is there, just like the ones in America. Exactly the same supermarkets that you find in the United States are there. And all kinds of other shops have branches too. And the prices are exactly like in the United States. The United States military bases around the world resemble a chart that is constantly changing. They close one place and expand another. It's unclear where they will move next or where they will set up a base. Now, let's see what other countries have. For example, China, Russia, or many others. If you search list of countries with military bases abroad on Google, this Wikipedia page will come up. China has 4 bases outside its territory: Cuba, Djibouti, Tajikistan, and Cambodia. Russia has bases in 14 countries. Here's the list. If you want to see the complete list, search this in Google to recognize all the countries with foreign bases. Currently, the United States stands alone as the leader in the world. One of the reasons for this is the widespread influence we just saw. Not only are there different bases, but also United States aircraft carriers, each of which is like a base on its own. They can be found in every sea and ocean across the world. Now, how much do these bases cost? The cost of these bases is included in the United States military budget, which is nearly $1 trillion a year. That means the United States spends about $1 trillion a year on its military and global power. If any country wants to compete with the United States and become a superpower, it must first have this money, $1 trillion per year, and it must be willing to spend it. Do you know what $1 trillion means? It's the total GDP of a relatively large country, like Turkey. That means if Turkey wanted to replace the United States, it would need to spend its entire annual income on its military to compete with the United States, and people would only have money for basic necessities. Of course, this is a joke. No country can spend its entire income on the military. China, which you know is the second largest economy in the world after the United States, with a GDP of $18 trillion, only spends $230 billion a year on its military, because with such a large population, they can't afford to spend more. However, like people in other countries, Americans aren't very fond of these United States military bases. They say that the tax money they pay is being used to fund bases in other countries. Sometimes they even protest. For example, Europeans are very upset about the United States having so much influence in the world. United States influence in Europe is excessive as well. That's why people in Europe are somewhat opposed to the United States, saying that America has started wars in Europe. Anyway, whatever people think about America, they must also understand that if a country wants to remain a superpower, it has to pay the price. Influence costs money. For example, the United States spends billions of dollars in different countries each year. Pakistan receives $2 to $3 billion annually. Egypt does too. Israel gets a lot more. Even Ukraine has been added today. All of these countries remain under United States influence because they must be able to stand on their own. If they can't stand on their own, they must be financially supported. Otherwise, the country might collapse and the political landscape might change. In other words, United States influence in that region could be at risk. This policy is similar to the era of the British Empire. They managed the world in the same way. They extracted from them and then helped them stay afloat. Who do you think the future superpower will be? Will the United States continue its dominance as a superpower? Or will someone else take its place?